Hey, it's Clark here. Welcome back to the 10 Best Ideas series. Man, I'm excited for this. I used to follow this author for his dating advice way back in the day. In fact, this book was actually awesome. When I saw this book, I was curious. I saw it everywhere from airports to Urban Outfitters, and the title, Stubble, Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Not Stubble, that's my book. It seemed like a millennial title, and I was curious, so I picked it up. And man, I'm glad I did, because Mark still has a gift for making the abstract really relatable. But you're not gonna wanna watch this video without your journal handy, ladies and gentlemen. Take some notes, let's dive in. Drop a comment at any point in this video for the algorithm boost. You ready to get started? Let's have some fun. I wanna start with my favorite point from the book. That is that success does not equal happiness. Now look, some of you know I tour in a band 5-6 months out of the year. We play shows all around the world, 35,000 people in Germany and whatever. And so when I read this next point about how musicians define success or failure, it really hit me. It tells a story about Dave Mustaine. Back in the 80s, was kicked out of his band. And so his whole motivation was, I'll prove them wrong. So what Dave did is he started his other band called Megadeth, and they were really successful. If I asked you what is success in the music industry, what would you say? It's probably like platinum selling records. They did that. They sold 25 million copies of their albums. Maybe it's playing arenas. They did that. They had sold out shows all around the world in different countries, all that stuff. Maybe it was people with tattoos. They did that. They have tons of people with tattoos of their band logo. So why? Was he interviewed and he was still unhappy? He's reported as saying he still feels like a failure. No matter what he does, he can't get over his old band. You know why? His old band, unfortunately for Dave Mustaine, happened to be Metallica. I don't even have to explain that to you, right? Biggest rock band in all of the world. So you see where he was comparing himself as Dave Mustaine's Megadeth versus Metallica. And he said in one of the interviews, I believe it was in their documentary for some kind of monster or something like that with Metallica, he said, I'll always be known as the guy who got thrown out of Metallica. We never opened for Metallica. I've never seen them live, but the coolest thing, this is totally unrelated to this video, is we were at this one festival, humble brag, right? And I walk into our dressing room and I'm like, what the heck is this? And it's a present from Metallica with like a handwritten card. And they have really girly handwriting. No, I'm just kidding, it was probably their assistant. But it said, hey, here's this, thanks for playing the festival. And they gave us their new whiskey. So I just have this sitting here as kind of a reminder. That was the coolest, that was my brush with fame with Metallica. After this video, we'll do a shot to celebrate, all right? This stuff tastes black, just like my soul. So despite his success, Dave Mustaine was not happy. Now, this is the point that success does not equal happiness. Okay, I get chills talking about that because a lot of times we think if we're successful, then we can finally allow ourselves to be happy, right? But even this is documented with astronauts who go to the moon and, they're doing something that I don't know how many people off the top of my head have done. Not many people have done. It's gone to outer space, right? They walk the moon, then they come back, they shake the president's hand, and then they're like, well, shit, now what? Now what do I do? That was my whole life right there. So they had success, but it's well documented that just like Dave Mustaine comparing himself to someone who's so successful, he could never live up to it, right? Astronauts have this thing called Astronaut Syndrome, and a lot of them end up alcoholics or depressed or rehab because they don't have that satisfaction, because they have success, but they don't have what's next. Now, there's a good example of this same story. It's of Pete Best, all right? And in the book, it talks about how Pete had a similar story, just like Dave Mustaine. Got kicked out of a band. The band went on to be super successful, but Pete Best actually realigned his values, which we'll talk about, and he found happiness. Do you know what band Pete Best got kicked out of? The Beatles. Okay, that's the biggest rock band of all time, and he still found happiness. He was getting interviewed and they're like, well, how did you do this? Because, the story of Dave Mustaine comparing to someone who's so high up, and then Pete Best, obviously with the Beatles, he said he found purpose in being there for his kids and doing what he loves. He said in an interview he did fall into like a deep depression watching his bandmates soar on and become the most iconic rock band of all time, until he did this. He switched his values. Okay, so instead of switching his values from, if I'm the biggest success, then I can be happy, he switched it to, what can I control right in front of me? And this might sound a little cliche, but it's really true. He switched it from, money and fame as his core values to being there for his kids and having a loving family. And then he also found that he can still play music and still get the love of it, even if it's not at that level, but in his free time. So it all goes back to the values. What Dave Mustaine valued was bigger and better and, all essentially ego-based compared to what, right? I'll prove them wrong, which you find with people all the time. Versus Pete Best switched it to, who do I want to become? How do I want to feel? I'm going to allow myself to feel happier. The self-development industry is fucked, all right? Because here's why. A lot of these self-improvement videos and becoming, into self-development makes you focus on what you lack. And that's totally normal. But you lack motivation, so you get into books about how to be motivated. You lack being good at talking to women, so you learn dating. You lack confidence, so you watch videos on confidence. You lack happiness if you're depressed, so you watch videos on happiness, and that's good. But here's what happens. Once you get that initial spike, it can turn you into, for lack of a better word, kind of a self-development junkie, and where you're never good, you're never fulfilled. You're always beating yourself up constantly because you've never felt like you've made it. So if you're someone who's reading hundreds and hundreds of self-development books, honestly, we have to ask ourselves, are we any happier because of it? Are we any more evolved because of it? And look, I love masterminds and seminars and knowledge and coaching and all that stuff. That's what, I really go to, and I'm right there with you. But at a certain point, enough is enough, and being happy and fulfilled and really not giving a fuck and true self-development comes from how you feel at your core. No amount of self-help, no magic book, no magic formula, no magic seminar is gonna make you love yourself, and that's a choice. A lot of the book talks about values, and what you value actually dictates your success or failure in life. So I want to spend a little time now talking about them. This is my favorite section in the book. I was talking to my coach, and he was actually comparing himself to some people in this industry, one being a super successful guy. I don't really want to name names because, I'm kind of close with all these people, but, I'll just leave it at the fact that he has a big mansion somewhere in Canada. He's blown up over the last couple years. He does all these videos, millions of subscribers and all this stuff. And he's like, look, I was honestly comparing myself to him. And then I realized we don't have the same values, and that I wouldn't really want that life because it's different than what I actually value. So yeah, on paper it looks more successful with, Porsches and cars with just garages with just cars in it, and 1,500 bottles of wine and 15 people working for you at all times in suits and stuff. It looks impressive, but based on the values, it would be a failure for him. Where he values spending time and being there with I think he has 4 kids now, and his wife, and big family, because he's Italian. And the fact here is neither is right or wrong, but they're different value based, and so that determines if it's successful or a failure. And we got to talking a little deeper, and he said, look, to compare, you need the full context. And that's always stuck with me. Guys, if you want to compare yourself to people on Instagram, you need the full context. And that's going to suck your happiness away, right? I literally remember being in 2015, I was in my mom's basement. I was scrolling through Instagram, watching like Jay Alvarez or, Christian LeBlanc and all these people who are traveling in these exotic places. And it did inspire me, and I did end up going there and traveling. But I learned something in that process, right? I was literally sitting at home, like kind of depressed. And I was like, why not me? This sucks. Other people are crushing it and having the life of their dreams, and there's tropical house music playing while they're doing like a gainer off a waterfall, and I'm here just sitting in my bed and it sucks. So I went there to experience what it was all about. I saved money. I was working a minimum wage job. I went over there, and then I realized, to compare on Instagram looks really good in a 15-second clip. But then the full context, what they don't show you is the behind the scenes stuff, like sitting on an airplane and being in airports for 48 hours. Like, some people in your hostel getting malaria or getting sick and food poisoning for 3 weeks, or getting ripped off on the side of the road and stuff, or, being stuck in the sun for 10 hours a day or whatever, getting to a small little island that actually takes 18 hours of like sitting in the stiff chair and on weird positions in a boat. And it's like, it all looks so good in the 1-minute Instagram clip, but the full context of it, the stuff they're not showing you, that's really what we need. You need the full picture. while we're here, I want to share another story about values, because that's, again, what the main majority of this book was about, is value-based and what you value, because that's the measuring stick of success or failure or happiness for you. I'm actually put this on that. And recently I had kind of a wake up with values on this channel, and I'm like, I don't really want to be talking about the stuff I've been talking about for the last year. I want to go back to what we started with this channel, which is videos like this. Big ideas, self-development, improvement, success, just being happy, enjoying the process, documenting it, being authentic, not trying to be so stiff, and, you know, to use the author's words, not giving a fuck, right? Because it's fun, and it's like once you have an audience, then you start giving a fuck more because you feel like you have to perform for them, if that makes sense. Versus when you're starting, like if you started a YouTube channel tomorrow, you're not performing for anyone. So it's easier for you to do that because there's no pressure. But that shift for me in content recently, and you guys will see it in the next month or two and this year, of going back to more self-development videos and stuff like that, came from a value standpoint. And that I have friends in this industry who have different values, and I looked at their business because that's what I was modeling. And I'm like, we don't really have the same values. Like, their values are just squeeze as much out of the customer, get as many people in your funnel, make as much money as possible at whatever cost. And like, yeah, okay, like I'm not trying to put myself above them and on this moral high ground, but like, it's just not for me, okay? And the stuff I value is like you guys and running into you at airports. Like some guy sat next to me on a plane who watches this channel, and we had a good conversation. He's, he's like stoked, and he bought my program, and he's stoked, and he's using it. He showed me this journal and everything, and I'm like, fuck, man, that's such a better value than more money, because the money will come if your values are right. And then a side note is you'll be in business instead of 10 or 20 months. Like all these guys, they're gonna get weeded out. Okay, there's always gonna be corrections. There's always gonna be stuff. You'll be in business for 10 or 20 years. That's the way you do it. That's how you really do it. And it starts with your values. It starts with your core. Because if you don't know what they are, then you're just going to take shortcuts. You're just going to find the fastest route through. And that's going to lead you to do some things that aren't aligned with your deep values. The next point is not from the book. It's actually of Mark Manson in an interview I was watching. And it's a cool story that I think goes in line with what we're talking about. It's on finding your passion. That's something you've probably thought, right? Like, how do I find my passion? What should I spend the next 40 years of my life doing? Because that's like the best years of my life when I have all this energy and time. I really want to put it to something that's awesome. So Mark was telling the story about when he wanted to be a musician, okay? And he loved it. So he was practicing music all day, every day, 6 hours. And so he goes to school one day, and then there's this really gifted kid who I think went on to win like 2 Grammys or something in present day. But he was there. So he goes up to him, he's like, how are you so gifted? Like, how much are you practicing? The kid looks at him, he's like, 6 hours. Mark's like, well, what are you doing in those 6 hours? Like, how are you this much better at me? We practice the same amount of time. He's like, I don't know, it's just kind of comes naturally, it comes easy. And so Mark eventually, he was doing music, but then he picked up writing on the side, and he really liked it. So he started writing dating articles and books and all that stuff on a blog. He goes to an internet marketing conference, and then people come up to him and they're like, Mark, what are you doing? Your articles are so much better. How much time are you spending? It's like, I don't know, probably like 6 hours an article. And they're like, what the heck? I spend that much time too. How are yours like that much better? And that's when it clicked for him. And I love this story because hopefully it's clicking for you, is that sometimes the things you're good at come naturally to you. That's a good indicator for what you should pursue. And that it's not all about finding this passion, like designing it in your head and then going and applying it. It comes down to 2 things. The first, what are you naturally good at? Okay, maybe this is talking for you. Maybe this is writing for you. Maybe this has nothing to do with business and you're just good at, I don't know, going into work and managing people. Maybe you're good with numbers, so it's like more logistic and accounting and bookkeeping or whatever. That's totally fine. So what are you good at? For me, it was speaking. I have the gift of gab. As you can see, I can rant for a long time. So I'm like, okay, I'm way better at this than I am at writing, so video. But the second is what makes you look awesome, all right? And what makes you look awesome? So I'm not saying video makes me always look awesome, but I feel like I can do a decent enough job to have something postable on YouTube. So for Mark, he said he's naturally good at writing. It made him look awesome, so that's what he did, and that's why this book did so successful. So for this next concept, let's bust out this handy dandy $1,300 flip chart that's imported from Italy. Breaking out the production for you, so you better enjoy it. I want to draw something that's from a marketing book, but it has huge implications in your life. It's all about self-development, and a lot of this book, Stubble Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is all about like, You know, we talked about how self-development is fucked and that it can actually lead to unhappiness. This is you right here. This is you when you first start learning anything, okay? You're green. You're soaking it up like a sponge. For example, if you watch self-development videos, this is like you discovering Tony Robbins and getting all these big ideas in your head, right? You know, if you're getting into dating, this is you, your first videos with pickup and learning all these lines. This is you with business. You're learning all about YouTube and how to do it and all this stuff, okay? So this is you right here. But then eventually you get to the point of where you're learning, right? You go into seminars, you're getting all this stuff. And so you eventually make it right here to now you're an expert, okay? You're on top of a mountain. You have all these ideas, you've learned enough, now you can teach it, or now you're fully self-developed. This is you after 100 books. You download every Audible app, you binge watch them all, and you got all these ideas. If you ever find yourself saying, oh, this is repetitive, or oh, teach me something new, or like, oh, I've already heard this before, chances are you're in this stage. This is expert, because when you're green, you're learning. You're like, oh, that's a new self-development idea. Or you get into Buddhism, oh, those are the Four Noble Truths. Or you get into anything productivity, oh, this actually works, morning routines and stuff. And so you start applying it, and you eventually get right here to this thing. It's like a little bridge that you have, right? And so this bridge takes you up to on top of a mountain where you know everything. Now this is kind of dangerous because you feel like you know it all, or you feel like you're searching for new and you're still hungry. So what happens is you turn into what I call the self-development jackass, all right? Where you're never satisfied, where you're never productive enough, where you're never happy enough, where your morning routine, if you get up at 5 a.m. and you miss one day, oh my God, I'm such a failure. This is not a fun place to be. And this is where you give too many fucks. And that's what Mark's talking about in this book. So what actually is cool is when you're trying to learn something, you need to go back here and remember why you did it in the first place. This is where a lot of the breakthroughs come. You ever heard that it's easier to teach kids things or they pick up language faster? Right? It's because they're okay starting green. That's why they see rapid improvement, beginner's luck, all that stuff. It's easier to learn something before we get right up here. But this is expert level with self-development. Once you're here, it's really dangerous because then you can just beat yourself up. You feel like you're not improving as fast, right? Because you remember this journey right here, and that was really fast to improve your life. And you feel like once you're here, what's the point, right? But here's the trick. There's nothing really new in self-development. It's all about instilling these lessons deeper. Self-development and success and, happiness and learning about it's great. But a lot of it's not about what you do, it's about how you feel and internalizing these things deep down inside. And sometimes you can get all the concepts in one book. There's plenty of books like that give you all the concepts, but if you don't believe them, you can't logically work your way through this. Here is emotion, right? This is like emotion over here. This is where you try to logically think things and logically learn enough to be happy, and your logical brain takes over. This stuff's a feeling, guys. Being happy with where you're at, feeling successful, loving your life, it's all a feeling. And that's why sometimes I feel self-development, man, can be a trap, because once you have your identity up here of I know it all and it still doesn't work, or I've read 50 books on how to be happy, but I still don't feel happy, or 50 books on confidence, but I'm still not confident, or 50 books on business, but I still don't have a bit, you get what I'm talking about. Well, then you beat yourself up and you're like, oh, maybe it just doesn't work for me. But that's totally backwards, because it's less about trying to go to the next level, because once you're here, it's like you're already there. And it's more about coming back to the start and feeling that emotions. And this is the problem with self-development, is sometimes it doesn't let you go back to the start, and you can get in your own head about things. Let's be honest, self-development books are saying the same 4 things over and over. I thought about this before the video. It's saying what? Be in the moment, do more of what you love yourself more, and then love others more by serving them and giving back. That's it. That's literally self-development, the 4 points that are over and over and over in every single book. And that's really all that matters at the end, right? If you follow those 4 things, it's pretty good. So for this one, it's a little heavy. You guys ready to go deep? You want to go deep on this one? This next point's about death. And Mark's talking about this guy who wrote, some book on what is it? And the fact is, we're the only species, when you think about it, that is aware of their own mortality. Okay, you and I, we know we have a finite number of days. In fact, if you live till 90 from birth, that's 32,850 days. I know that not just because I have random numbers memorized or I can do math calculations. I literally write that number every single day in the front of my journal, okay? Or every year in the front of my journal. And then you take your age and you subtract it from those 32,850. Like that is, to me, that's really inspiring and motivating because you got to make those days count. That's what Steve Jobs talked about. He said, facing my own mortality, realizing I'm gonna die one day, is why he was able to go on and build Apple and work so hard, because he knew his time was limited. Okay, so, but going back to the point, so death, we are aware of this. So a lot of what we do is seeking immortality, because we're like, I don't want to die. Oh my God, I'm so afraid of it, or I don't know what's gonna happen. I can't imagine, my ego can't comprehend just not being here the whole time. So everything from building a business that's going to outlast us, making money to pass on to our kids and leaving a legacy, religion and politics, fame, a lot of this stuff is for immortality. And we might not even realize it, but subconsciously we're so afraid of death that we do things to stay immortal. And you'll hear people say, I need to make a mark, right? Have you said that? I've definitely said that. And that you want to leave a lasting legacy. You want your name carved in, I don't know, the Hollywood stars or something, so it's there forever. Or, presidents put their giant faces in the side of a mountaintop. But that quest for immortality and the need to leave a mark actually creates a ton of anxiety because you feel like time's running out. You ever been in class, just, way back in like elementary school, right? Think about it. When your teacher started counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, that like got so stressful, and everyone, even if the class was going chaotic, they'd scramble and eventually find their chairs before it hit 1. Nothing was really going to happen before it hit 1, right? It's just the time goes on, class moves on. But you thought something really, really bad was going to happen, so you scramble around because it was stressful. Countdowns are stressful. It's the same thing, I feel like, with life. Like that stress of, oh my God, the countdown, except it's like a 32,850 countdown. 32,849 countdown, right? It keeps getting younger and younger, or closer and closer. That's why people are so obsessed with anti-aging and looking young and youth and all that stuff. So what this whole rant about death and mortality and immortality is getting at is being okay dropping that need to leave a mark, and being more in the moment, as trivial and kind of, it can be a little cliche sometimes to say just be in the moment more. But what would your life look like if you gave up the need to always leave a mark? Now I know that has huge upsides with people and, wanting to leave a mark and ambition and refusing to settle. That's what we're all about. But like being okay laughing at it a little more and not caring so much about it to where you're sacrificing today's happiness for tomorrow's joy. That one was heavy, guys. Cheers. Who knew we'd be doing a YouTube video on death and immortality? Jesus, I go all over the place, I swear to God. That's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. If you liked one thing from this video, comment it down below in the comments, always looking for that. I'll link up our book review series if you want more of these videos on topics like this. Feel free to follow me on Instagram for more behind the scenes stuff. Love each and every one of you, and until next time, stop settling, start living.